Horror slashers aren't just about body counts and the gore that comes with it. What makes us fear them to the level that we do is their ability to reach into our psychological mental state that often exposes the fear we don't always acknowledge. Each of the most iconic killers throughout the history of slashers always find ways to touch into the most unique part of the human emotion known as fear. In this video, we'll explore how each one of them affects us differently, and why these characters continue to haunt the audiences even decades after their creation. So, let's break it down. Chucky terrifies us because he is a part of the innocence that dolls bring to children turned into evil situations. Dolls are supposed to represent the safety of children while also providing comfort. Yet Chucky twists this thought and takes advantage of the opportunity to manipulate his way through situations of being the ultimate serial killer. He creates the idea of something being trusted becoming dangerously unexpected. His size makes him unsettling because he can hide in the most ordinary places, so it's a lot easier for him to shift his way to get where he wants whenever he wants. That could be bedrooms, toy boxes, and even in your arms. However, his size isn't the only thing that makes him terrifying, nor even his strength, but mainly the violation of trust when it comes to children and adults. You wouldn't even realize you are in trouble until he's close enough, and at that point, it'll be the toughest challenge that anyone will ever have to face. With the psychological impact overall, Chucky weaponizes the unusual fear of shifting innocence away from dolls because dolls are usually safe and comforting towards children, so seeing one become a sadistic killer forces us to question the safety of them or any plastic interactive toy in domestic spaces. And the fear trigger involves childhood trust turning into an ultimate betrayal, and the underlying theme of all of this is a small powerless killer that's always where we least expect him to be. Leatherface wipes away the small percentage of society and confronts the viewers with animalistic violence. His silence, along with the mask of human skin and his dependence on his cannibalistic family, shows a life completely disconnected from a morality perspective. The psychological impact comes from the fear of being reduced to prey with being trapped in an environment where human life has no meaning. Leatherface embodies the terror of a monster that isn't supernatural, but is a rather deeply damaged human being because of the family he was always surrounded by. The psychological impact of this whole thing is Leatherface embodying pure and primal brutality. He is a mental disabled and abused individual whose terrifying actions are a result of his living situation. This creates psychological horror for not only his victims, but also the audience as well. The fear trigger is the fear of being prey in a world with no order, morality, or rules. The underlying theme of everything is cannibalism and a rural isolation of family and society. Jason represents inevitability, born from childhood trauma and neglect, then also returning as an avenged force that also can be reasoned with or killed. His mask and silence is there to erase humanity that comes in the way of his path, making him more symbol than man. Psychologically, Jason embodies our fear with relentless force, and it doesn't matter how fast you run or how far you go, Jason will always be behind you. His killings also reflect a revengeful fear of judgment, particularly towards youth who engage in violent behavior, making him both a monster and a moral executor. The psychological impact with Jason represents the unstoppable vengeance. He's the embodiment of childhood trauma and neglect, combined with rage from drowning at Camp Crystal Lake. And the fear trigger is the fear of being unavoidable. You can't reason with him and you can't kill him. And the underlying theme of all of this is punishment of youth and transgression, with drinking, drugs, and sex, reflecting cultural fears of degeneration. Michael Myers is the ultimate embodiment of the boogeyman. With no clear motive and no emotional expression, he is evil without reason, and his mask erases humanity, turning him into the most dangerous, faceless force. The terror of Michael Myers lies in his silence, his persistence, and his presence in the most ordinary places while hunting the neighborhood. He reminds us that horror doesn't just exist in the woods or any other place in the middle of nowhere, but right outside your suburban home. The psychological impact of Michael Myers embodies pure evil without a motive. His blank mask and silence separates him from humanity, turning him into the most relentless force in the horror slasher genre. Fear Trigger is the boogeyman archetype, led by the fact that he could be anywhere watching and never stops. And the underlying theme of all of this is suburban vulnerability. Horror isn't far away in the forest or the woods, but mainly right in your neighborhood. Ghostface is unique among slashers because the mask always hides a human, making it a constant mystery, and you never know who's behind the mask, making it difficult to trust others around you, which is dangerous because it usually takes a team effort to take down two masked killers with the best IQ that are either A, experienced serial killers, or B, someone who studies the craft of a killer through horror movies, making them the more difficult task. And the killer is often somewhat close to the victim. Unlike Michael or Jason, Ghostface is not immortal, but his powers comes from unpredictability. And every time Ghostface appears, the identity changes, and this fuels paranoia. Like, who can you really trust? Friends, lovers, or family members could all be wearing the mask. Ghostface embodies our fear of betrayal and deception, and he weaponizes the slasher genre itself by turning horror into a deadly game. So you're in a tough situation of taking the potential risk of trusting somebody that is the wrong person, that is probably the killer, and not trusting anyone at all can also make you an easy target to catch. So the victims are all often in a 50-50 situation and pretty much have to rely on luck for the most part to survive this case. The psychological impact is unlike the other iconic slashers. Ghostface is always human, and the mask symbolizes being anonymous, distrust, and the terrifying idea that anybody around you, including even friends or even partners, could be the killer. The fear triggers involve paranoia, betrayal, and unpredictability. And the underlying theme of all of this is meta commentary, with Ghostface reminding us that horror itself is a recurring theme of its own, and killers are products of obsession, culture, and copycats. Freddy is terrifying because he attacks when we're most vulnerable and when you're already unconscious, or crazily, in our dreams. Sleep is unavoidable, and that gives Freddy the opportunity to use that to his advantage, and his sadistic humor, along with his hideous disguise, make him both charismatic and horrifying. But at his core, Freddy represents loss of control. When he invades your dreams, he takes control of your subconscious, leaving you powerless. Thematically, Freddy also embodies generational trauma and the sins of the parents creating this terrible situation for their children to suffer later on in their teenage years. The psychological impact involves Freddy attacking us when we are most vulnerable, in our dreams. Sleep is unavoidable, so he makes rest even seem unsafe. The fear trigger is loss of control, with our subconscious becoming his playground. The underlying theme of all of this is the sins of the parents revisiting the children, along with generational trauma. And Freddy blends humor with brutality, forcing the audience to both laugh and suffer. Each slasher thrives because they personify specific psychological fears. Together, they form a spectrum of horror that attacks our psyche in every space, whether it's our home, family, community, relationships, and even our dreams. These 6 horror icons endure because they don't just kill, they also symbolize. Each one forces us to confront a different layer of human fear, from childhood trust to survival, betrayal, suburban vulnerability, to the terrors of our own minds. Together, they represent a complete spectrum of psychological horror. And that's why, decades later, we still can't look away.